The new Mac Mini with an M4 Pro chip offers incredible power at an unbelievable price. Here's my review. The Mac Mini has been around a long time, almost 20 years. Incredibly, with the addition of the M4 Mac Mini, it has only ever had 3 designs. Apple introduced the Mac Mini with a white plastic top in the PowerPC and iPod era. The first Intel versions, which I have here, shared the same industrial design. It was a good value. Apple redesigned the Mac Mini in 2010 with a sleek aluminum unibody that would last for the next 14 years. This Mac Mini struggled for much of its life. To be honest, the models sold between 2014 and 2018 were bad. They were slow. The first Apple Silicon models, in what is now something of a tradition, shared the same case as the older models. But with the incredible efficiency of Apple's new processors, a third of the case sat completely empty. With the Apple Silicon makeover, the new M4 Mac Mini looks like a baby Mac Studio. It's just so darn cute. I ordered the high-end Mac Mini with an M4 Pro chip. For $13.99, you get 512 gigabytes of storage, 24 gigabytes of unified memory, an M4 Pro chip with a 12-core CPU, 16-core GPU, and 16-core neural engine, 3 Thunderbolt 5 ports and 2 USB-C ports, gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.3. And for reference, the peripherals I'm using are the Asus ProArt Display 5K. If you haven't heard the good news, it's comparable in specs to the Apple Studio Display at nearly half the cost. The new Magic Keyboard with Touch ID, and the new Magic Trackpad with USB-C, which you can see a review of in a separate video. The Otherworld Computing Thunder 4. This hosts my Time Machine backups, Apple Archive, Photo Library, and Plex Library. So now let's talk design. The new Mac Mini is smaller, lighter, and about 50 times more adorable. Not that the Mac Mini has ever been big when compared to a standard PC tower, but the smaller footprint really has a big impact on your desk space. It's only 5 inches by 5 inches. It's actually too small for the Timex clock I usually sit keeping on top of my Mac Mini, so I had to move it to the top of the Thunder Bay instead. But more surprising than that is the weight. The old Mac Mini was surprisingly heavy. The new Mac Mini is the lightest Mac ever. Yes, even lighter than the 12-inch MacBook, 1.6 pounds versus 2 pounds. It wears the same aluminum dressing, but it now wraps all the way around to the back. There's no big plastic backplate. The ports look really nice like this. I can't get over that gorgeous, perfectly rectangular Ethernet jack. But I'm sure what you all want to hear about is the power button on the bottom. Although the Mac Mini doesn't sit flat on the desk, the lip is just too short to be able to squeeze your finger under there. You have to lift it a little bit. It's really not that big of a deal. I've had to press the power button more in the last week than I have the entire preceding year, just because I've been moving these computers around so much. You can take care of 90% of the cases where you have to press the power button by going to System Settings, Energy, and enabling Startup automatically after power failure. Even if you're old-fashioned and you turn off your computer every day, I still don't think it'll bother you that much, because the computer is so light it's really easy to just lift it up and press. In fact, the new power button is more concave than the old one, which used to sit flush against the back. So, although it's in a slightly less convenient spot, it's actually easier to find and press without looking. Now let's talk connectivity. If you're coming from an M2 Pro Mac Mini, you previously had 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports and 2 USB-A ports. Now you have 3 Thunderbolt 5 ports and 2 USB-C ports. It's a loss of 1 connection, but the capabilities are so much greater. Thunderbolt 5 lets you transfer data at twice the speed, 80 gigabits per second. And for driving an external display, you have new options for super high resolutions at super high frame rates. I haven't been able to push Thunderbolt 5 to the limits because this is actually one area where Apple is broadly ahead of the curve. There aren't a lot of Thunderbolt 5 accessories yet. But if you want more ports, including a legacy USB-A port, OWC's first Thunderbolt 5 dock is already for sale. Personally, my biggest quibble with the ports is the headphone jack moving to the front. And it's a logical move because I can imagine most people plug in headphones or use the speakers coming out of their studio display. But my sound system is a Roland Cube 30X amplifier that sits underneath my desk and makes for a good footrest. So I just have a headphone cable running up the back of my desk and plugging into the headphone jack in the back of my Mac. Now I would either have to run the cable up and around to the front of the Mac, an ugly sight even if the cable were long enough, or run it through the headphone jack on my display, which is what I settled on. But that presented its own issues. Lots of people have cheap external displays that don't have pass-through audio, like I did until just a few weeks ago. And if you want to run your display over HDMI because you want to reserve your Thunderbolt ports for peripherals, then you lose the ability to control the volume level from the Mac. But I have to concede that I'm in the minority. Most people plug in wired headphones rather than use desktop speakers, much less a guitar amplifier, and it's much easier being able to see the headphone jack rather than plug it in blindly from behind through your mess of all your other cables. Oh, and I suppose I should also mention that the built-in speaker still sounds like absolute dog shit, but hopefully no one is actually using that. Now let's talk performance. Apple Silicon's M3 generation was the first to use a new 3nm manufacturing process. And according to reports, it was hard to manufacture. Performance tests also showed that it wasn't as significant a leap as expected. The M3 generation was another similar jump as M1 was to M2. The Pro chip was also a little nerfed. The M3 Pro had 6 performance cores and 6 efficiency cores, bringing its performance closer in line to the entry-level chip. The M4 family is made with an enhanced 3nm process. The M4 Pro also got promoted to 8 performance cores and 2 efficiency cores. And for an extra $200, you can add 2 more performance cores. Trickle-down performance is real. In most situations, the M4 chip outperforms my old M2 Pro Mac Mini. And the M4 Pro is a powerhouse. In some benchmarks, it's shown as outperforming the M2 Ultra, which was previously the best money could buy. That means that, for the time being, this $1,400 Mac Mini, in some cases, outperforms the $7,000 Mac Pro. In my tests, I timed the Mac Mini doing some of the tasks that I do on a regular basis. Apple usually cherry picks its stats for the best numbers, and benchmarks don't show the whole story. But even in these real-world tests, I noticed significant improvement. Rendering a video was 22% faster. Exporting an episode of the Cultcast was a whopping 49% faster. Upscaling a 48 megapixel Pro RAW image in Pixelmator was 35% faster. And that's all in the Neural Engine, so you know that a lot of Apple Intelligence features are going to run that much faster too. Compiling some apps in Xcode and running some Python scripts were 6% and 22% faster, respectively. Those are some big improvements for 2 short years. The Mac Mini was previously the king when it came to getting your bang for the buck. It was an incredible value before, now it's a steal. It's making a lot of Mac Studio owners realize that they can downsize. An optioned out Mac Mini starts to approach Mac Studio prices. And if you'd rather put your money towards more internal storage space, rather than getting a Max chip over a Pro chip, because the Pro chip is plenty fast, you'd be better off with a Mini. In the Apple Silicon age, Macs and MacBooks offer identical performance when you give them identical specs, due to how Apple handles a process called binning. When you're making a processor, not all of them come out of the fabrication lab identically. Some of them will be a little faster than others. Intel would take the slow chips and they would sell them at lower prices or put them in laptops. But Apple takes the opposite approach. They put their best chips in the MacBooks and the slower chips in Macs. Because on a desktop, you can always juice it up with more power to squeeze the same level of performance out of it. Laptops need to be the most energy efficient. What that means is that you don't buy a Mac Mini over a MacBook Pro because it's faster. You buy a Mac Mini because you can get a better computer for the same price. If you're comparing entry-level models, the Mac Mini is half the price. If you bump up to the M4 Pro chip, you save $600, and if you want an optioned-out version with more memory and storage, you save $1,000. The best value in the computer industry just got even better. Be sure to check out my other reviews. Remember to like and subscribe. I'm Griffin Jones with Cult of Mac.